the first thing would be thank you so much for these wonderful presentations, and every presentation was somehow dealing with a different topic and still dealing with the same topic. And I would be very lucky if we could continue after your presentations, but also like after the discussions of yesterday, because already yesterday I had the feeling that somehow every discussion was connected also to this activism and how to make it sustainable, and the questions of yesterday were, for example, how to build the community. It was in every section. We were asking this: how to involve the residents, how to make the public space, how to give the public space more value. Samir, you have said one thing that I really liked, people should like the city where they live. And for me, it was also like, wow, this is it, because also like Bratislava, where I come from, there is always this question of either people hate it or they like it, or I love it. And of course there was there were these questions of and these issues of privatization and private property and how to deal with it. So I hope that today we just can continue after this wonderful presentations. Kasper, you wanted to start with the question.
Yeah, I wanted to start because like after all the presentations and after yesterday as well, I think like the property, the ownership is like the key. Those are key words that we are repeating here, and in different contexts. And at some point, I start feeling like we started like talking not about residents, in fact, but about owners, and this is to start with is like how does this ownership structure in these different countries? I mean, in Eastern Europe, it will be in terms of housing mostly the private ownership, but the land in between it differs. How is it solved? It will be different even in one country between different situations. Like in Poland, it will be different in the housing estates that are run by the cooperatives, where the land is owned by the cooperative, and different in like more city-owned areas. So to start with the last presentation, how was it in Tirana when you said that the people couldn't feel that the square that you designed is theirs, and you offered them the share in the public space that you are creating? Who was the land? What was the municipality opinion on this, and how? Was it some kind of formalized ownership, or was it more of a some kind of a deal with residents or owners of the flats around? How do you choose them? Let's also map the actors in this process, because we repeat residents, but in the end we talk about owners, and yes. So who is entitled to take part in this participatory processes?
I mean, who is entitled is a big also question for us. So from the start, the reason why we chose that area, and actually in particular that particular time, 2014, our municipality was non-existent. In a sense, they were there, but they were totally not active compared to what they are today. Which is good and bad in both in the same moments. So that was a public land where we developed the project. So it's a public common space. We asked for a permit to develop the project, and that was clear. After the permit, we could do the works, both in the first case, which we failed successfully, and also the second case. But it was very important for us to grasp the fact that someone would maintain that. And even for the municipality of Tirana, even today, that they have, I think, maybe a bigger budget than our GDP as a country. I'm not joking now. Because Tirana is almost half of Albanians live in the capital, and 400,000 more commute every day from the nearby city. So even for them today to maintain such a space is very difficult. So for us, it was always about who will maintain it. Not only who will not destroy it, but who will also maintain it. And you know, the best security cameras are the grandmas in the balconies in the Balkans. So you don't need to, if you have them involved and they love the space and they want their grandchildren and their children to play there, it's a very good factor. And we saw that from the first moment. You know, the old elderly were the first people involved in the discussions. And then they brought their nieces and their nephews, and then they brought their children. So, but it took a lot of time because it was also a negotiation. So the first public space was destroyed because people wanted to park, and there was no more parking space suddenly, but no one asked them if they wanted to be removed. And then people were asked, but wait, if we're going to do these benches and we're going to do this garden here, you will not have 5 parking spaces. So they said, it's okay, my children will play here. Because also it's understandable that it's a very high, important problem now that children don't have any place to play, at least in Albania. So it was something very progressive. It took time, but it sparked. And I think also the fact that while we were doing the works, people were there. And also they themselves appointed 2 administrators from the community that will rotate every year, every 6 months, and maintain the project is also very, very important. But I think if we would repeat that today, would be somehow similar, but people will be more skeptic. Because taking a picture today in the public space in a neighborhood in 2024 means that you want to promote and gain leverage in public opinion. In 2014 it was not like that. It was a picture to remember the moments. Because, you know, social media I think is also killed that. Anyway, in terms of ownership, I think every case will fail if people will not sketch it themselves. You know, we can make it better, we can think of other issues, but if they don't feel it theirs, it's what happened to Albania all over this territory. The rural areas, the natural areas, people were forced to live in the mountain because they were born in the mountain. And at the moment they could leave the mountain, or the village, or the seaside, or any kind of place, they went and occupied land where they found it, and then they built their dream. They built a house there. How and when, and all details are important, but also not important. Important is to try to create this level of activism where politicians and governments cannot use this process and this process of legalizing that informal property in order to gain votes the next elections. So it's a vicious cycle, but I don't want to take more time responding.
Yeah, but I think that there is this general question of involving people into the activities, and every one of you is somehow trying to do this. So where would you say, okay, it was like the not best practice, but a good practice that we did? Where were the great challenges for you, just to involve people and to because all the time I was just thinking about, okay, involve, but also make them active. And somehow the question would be also, is it for you important, and also for the audience, is it important that the activity will be then taken over by people who are living there? Or, yeah, this is just a question for everyone.
Yeah, but I was also going to ask you something because you said that in Georgia the level of involvement of residents was already higher or significant when you started your project there. So how was it? How did you channel it into the more into the public realm than taking care of the closest part of your environment?
So according to your question, I think, of course, it's important that it's taken over by the residents. So otherwise, it's our project or someone else. So this is first. And then about the Georgian case, we have to make a differentiation between involvement and people who are engaged. Yeah? As well about ownership, which is of course a crucial issue, but the ownership is then not directly that means not directly that the people are involved in the planning procedures also. So this is really the differentiation. So what I have just have observed in Georgia or in Tbilisi, that the people are very active, yeah. And you were saying in the beginning, well, people should love or should like their cities. Yeah? So I have to say, in all the modernist housing in the former Eastern Bloc districts, always the people loved their districts, the neighborhood. This was not the problem. But the problem is really how the people they don't have experience with property. I mean, they received their apartments, but they they were not taught in a way, and they were not told how to, in a way, treat their individual ownership or possession, so that it's more than just taking care of your apartment, but of the entrance, of the facade, etc. And just as I said, in Georgia, it was this. It's a good, it's a benefit that people are interested and are engaged. The same in Germany. You have cities where the people would discuss public events, or they would be active, and others keep silent. So this is good. And now you have to link this to, I would say, as well, to a broader picture. That's why I said we have to involve, in Georgia, is it then the district management and the municipality, because they have the money, yeah, they have the power. And this is always the problem of, I would say, or not the problem maybe, but the challenge of individual engagement, that you only see yourself. You don't see the benefit for the society, for the neighborhood. Yeah? And that's why this is crucial from my perspective, to get the officials, the official body and the residents on one table to discuss this together. Otherwise, it won't be successful. And last sentence, this is in Tbilisi, and I know in other as well, already in Germany. I mean, there's a mistrust or skepsis, yeah, against administration. Well, what they are doing there, and of course in Tbilisi, this corruption. So this is very difficult then to say, well, the administration is a good partner, and people run away. Yeah, so this was in the very beginning of our lab, and we are still forcing this to explain. Yeah, these are our partners too.
And the land in between blocks in Tbilisi belongs to?
Good point. Belongs to the municipality and partly private. And here's the point. For instance, there's a lot of illegal buildings there have been realized. And some of the garages, yeah, which are very ugly, and part of the people, they want to remove the cars at the garages. They are on municipal land. But the city, they step back from removing the garages, yeah, because they don't have a solution where to put the cars. So, and in other districts, you see they have removed, but this is what I said, there's no black-white. I mean, the municipality could act there and remove it, but they would not do. I think first there has to be an agreement. So there should be, I would say, a proper idea, at least, a good plan, a flexible plan, how to reorganize this, then convince the people, but you have to make an offer for substituting garages.
And maybe the question would be, who should then be the partner of the municipality? like you as the project leader or someone who is creating this project, or the residents, or
yeah. So again, the question about actors in this process. So
should be the actor. What do you think?
As I said, so there has to be an institution. So, and this is what we are now trying to do. I mean, there is in Tbilisi, for instance, the homeowner associations. I know this in other countries too. So, yeah, then there is the district management, which is there, I would say, a key body. Yeah, so because they are not like on this. Like how to say, on the umbrella organization of the municipality, but really within the district. So they are a good partner, but I think there would be needed an additional instrument or figure, what we have in Germany, like the district management. So it's their official body, and here it's as well like, how to say, established, for instance, by the municipality, but it's building a bridge between officials and the residents. So this is needed, and I'm happy to do this job if I'm going to be paid by someone. So.
And yeah, that was also like I was going to switch to you now, because like you talked also about this concept for the cooperative that is made out of legal entities rather than the individual owners or tenants. And then the question for the last lecture of Joanna Kusiak is coming back. Isn't it too abstract, or isn't it detached then from the real building, real occupation of the flats and so on? But
well, this is more like a backdoor that we're trying to figure out to actually do in current condition the normal cooperative model. But this is the issue with, well, I think or at least from my experience trying to talk to municipalities in Poland, they don't have too much trust. They started to take care of their public spaces and to be involved as a municipality, but they don't have so much trust in this third sector, in like other organizations, in the inhabitants associations. But in that sense, like a cooperative model is interesting because there is no issue of financing there. I think when we're talking about management of an area, it is good to have both connected, the management of the open spaces as well as the management of the building, and that includes housing as well as services like shops. And this is the model where the financing is connected with the management. So some good housing cooperatives in Warsaw, they have those pavilions when they have shops. They get profit from renting those spaces out, and then they, for example, take care of parks or water, kind of green spaces, etc. There are a lot of issues in terms of how they're managed and how much the actually cooperative members can influence the decisions of those organizations. So they're not like truly democratic. But at least those two parts are then interconnected. You don't have to have like external financing to maintain. This is like part of this financial and management ecosystem that just can work in long term. And I also think that when we're talking here about future transformations or transformations of buildings, in terms of like architecture, for example, we started talking about, how to make a building, or someone said during yesterday's talks that the prefab housing is actually a very nice structure because it's easy to be transformed and etc., like insulated in terms of like new environmental requirements, much more than, for example, 19th century housing. And when we're talking about the models and management system, I think we also have to bear that in mind, that we should sort of plan the management systems that will also be able to be transformed in the future. So therefore, the issue with private ownership is that it's very difficult to transform it in the future, because when it has been privatized, you cannot do anything with it anymore. And I think maybe Poland is already past that stage, that we privatized everything we could, and now we're coming back to this cooperative and community ownership and public or municipal involvement. So maybe we're more there.
No, I was going to ask Paulina, how is it in Tallinn? Like, you started these initiatives as a group of inhabitants, and how they how did you manage to, or not to, engage the public institutions, or besides the funding, like, because this is like the grant mechanisms or the prices that you received, but was the I don't know, is it cooperative that runs this housing estate, or did you somehow engage with the talks with municipality, or you focuses more on this soft kind of actions, like targeted to the inhabitants only? But on the other hand, you showed the art pieces that required some owner of the building to agree to have it. So how you, as a group of inhabitants, managed to talk with the much bigger institutions, somehow sometimes close to the Russian-speaking population, as you said.
In Estonia, everything is privatized. We have flat owner associations. Every house is a separate flat owner organization. Land near a house belongs to this house. Other pieces of ground belongs to municipality or to the city. In Estonia, it's very easy to reach someone or some institution. You just found their contacts on internet and you write, and that's it. The previous president of Estonia, Kersti Kaljulaid, was in our garden. We just called her and invited her, so it's very easy for us to build communications between institutions, municipality. I don't know.
But did they become like what about the effects, like long-term effects? So did they become more aware of the needs of inhabitants, or you seen some of your ideas being implemented by the institutions or the public spaces owners or the municipality, or was it only like engagement on this level of like attending the events only, or what was the like long-term effect of your actions?
I think both. We do a lot of with municipality and local companies, and we do a lot with local citizens.
I would say this is the ideal approach of the municipality to an NGO which is active. But I can imagine that there are maybe also like different experiences with the authorities, with the municipality. If so, how had you such experiences, or how to deal with it? Because I, for example, see changing the political situation in Slovakia, and the mistrust is like bigger and bigger, and the mistrust between NGOs and like the authorities is huge. So maybe how to deal with such a situation, or have you had it?
Very, very, very shortly. In 2015, we did for the first time. We proposed the municipality to do this Tirana without cars. So we proposed to block the city center part, not the square, but the big part of the boulevards, because the boulevard was not used as a street practically. Deviations of traffic pushed the cars in other streets and created this bottleneck in many cases. So our provocation, they were very happy to have the activity, they were very happy for the idea, but they used the second and the third edition that they did themselves because they saw it as an event of the municipality. For us was okay, in a sense, we have our name is not there, we can be critical enough if we don't like it. So in the fourth edition of the Tirana without cars, we made this provocation that we blocked the city center, but we drew tram lines on top of the boulevards. So the tram lines with this white paint stayed there for like 2 weeks or something. So on one side, children were happy, parents were happy, drivers sweared on everything we have during that day, but there was this trace left. In order to make the municipality address the idea that there are only buses in Tirana, and they're not very efficient, not efficient at all. So you have to respond on infrastructure. So I think for us the discussion is always, we always have a debate with them, but we decide not to be critical and say it's wrong, but try also to be constructive. Because if you don't do that, they will accuse you that you're the opposition. And I think our job is not being on one side or the other. I think our job is being with everyone for the greater good of the community and our cities.
And yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. So in general, I would say that we have a pretty good relationship with the local municipalities in Budapest, and we have projects, of course, outside the capital, and we generally had good experiences. And among the district governments, local councils in Budapest, we usually, reach out to those that we kind of know that they would be open to a project, and maybe with through the cooperations with them, we can provide an example for other municipalities to see how much good we can actually do together. So that is also a way of finding finding ways to do our activities. And when it comes to Budapest 100, it is actually kind of an established brand by now, and many municipalities, the municipality of Budapest, we have a really good cooperation with the municipality of Budapest actually, but also with the districts, because they see the potential in how it can motivate people to care more about their environment and to feel that kind of ownership that can later lead to this larger development that you all have been talking about. And when it comes to housing estates, that's really a very special area. And I would like to just connect back a little bit to the beginning of this discussion, is that, yes, housing estates are a very special thing because people there, they received their apartments. So the feeling of ownership is even less than in other houses in an urban environment. And it's especially difficult, yes, to activate them, to motivate them to actually participate and to do things on their own, and because they are used to these top-down organized programs. So there are these different festivals or fairs or different events on national holidays and stuff in the districts, and they are usually organized in the public spaces of the housing estates. But that comes comes from the municipality, that comes from, you know, a top-down thing. And they do not have to do anything. They just have to go there and enjoy the already organized program. Now, to motivate them to do it on their own, that's a completely different topic.
Maybe can I try to answer a bit, but I'm not, I mean, I will bring a more pessimistic view. Especially from the project that we try to develop, the topic of informal practices doesn't really always require municipality support. So we were a bit careful to get them on board, because, you know, municipalities step in, they embrace, they start to organize, and eventually they destroy the very character of these informal practices, which are being disobedient, autonomous, practice of freedom sometimes. So you have to be very careful and to have a really, let's say, understandable partner to discuss how you unplan things in a, let's say, post-socialist city where, and especially in Bucharest, municipalities have a very paternalistic type of governance combined with neoliberal practices, and all under this anti-communist discourse, which sees all these kind of informal practices as remnants of the communist past, self-shame, oh, this is not a proper way to live in the city. So our focus was, of course, not directed towards the municipality. We wanted to be heard, but our focus was to raise, let's say, the public awareness. So our intervention was rather in the public narrative, to bring evidence of these practices, that they are valuable, not in a, let's say, ideological discourse, but in the context of contemporary crisis. Climate change, the shrinking democracy, in the pandemic, for example, the lack of social spaces and so on. So it's a really, a tricky relationship to always wish to get municipality on board, because they will scale it up and take it over. So yeah, that's why in our case, the garage, it's not a living lab. So we were kind of fencing with that idea and also doing my PhD, but in the end, it concluded that this won't be a living lab. So it's something else. Maybe I have time to explain a bit more, but yeah, that's the relation with the municipality.
Yeah, that was the question.
So after what Barbara just said, I wanted to ask, so do we have to take away with us the conclusion that it is absolutely necessary to bring, in a way, from outside activities into these neighborhoods? Are there not any activities where they do themselves? We had so many examples where you obviously had a huge impact and they are all necessary, but since we have so many examples, do you have examples where people who live there do something their own, where you do not have to initiate it? So what do we have to take away here as a conclusion?
What there were. So probably it was so, I mean, we were all running through the slides, but I saw in every presentation, and I just can say at least for my own, so there were all the activities. I mean, there are the initiatives already by the residents. And as I understood you, but as well it was in Tbilisi, that we took these initiatives as a starting point. So we were then even encouraged them, helping them, well, how to do this even better. Yeah, so, but this was nothing, there was, I think, to start from scratch, if there would not an initiative already, would be very difficult.
Okay, but then the question would be, is the help from outside necessary?
Yes, I mean, I think we can't say this is always the case. Yeah, so, but in the projects we have, and I think this was as well always the case coming from outside in a way, but it was always very local. Yeah. So as we said, so I mean, we brought maybe in, and this is as well, and every a good moderator is probably not really engaged in the topic himself or herself. So, and this is the way, so not really from outside, and it has really to be driven by the people on site, but I understood that this was the case.
Yes, we have a queue already. Okay. Wow.
But this is like, no. Maybe this is... Yeah.
The challenge of those Soviet micro-rayons is the really poor state, not only of public spaces, but of the buildings themselves. Therefore, we have those, big European governmental programs like Renovation Wave, and I think that each government of European Union country has these national programs of renovation of the housing, which in many cases is not very successful because the inhabitants, as they have their own flat, it's really very hard to come to a consensus that a house should be renovated. So during your practices, you activate the communities, you gain the trust. Do you make one step forward and work on convincing those communities and guiding them so that they really applied for the funds and made the renovation projects? I know this is really burdensome, very, very bureaucratic, but are you thinking of this strategical step forward, or are you limiting yourself to the public space and all those initiatives that are more soft and probably more interesting?
Anyone?
This is very funny. Our also municipality covers half of the amount invested, up to a limited to a maximum of 50,000 for the thermal insulation, for example, energy efficiency of the buildings. And I will give you a personal example. My father-in-law wants to do that in his apartment, but from the 10 tenants, it's a very small number, 10 people living in one building, 2 of them, they don't want to do that. They just don't want to. Their sons or daughters will pay the cost, but they don't want to put the burden on them. Doesn't matter the reason, they don't want to. So we've done that. Also in my practice, we've been engaged in other apartment blocks, but it's always about finding that one lucky successful case that would be applied, and then transmitting the message, disseminating that story, because that can inspire or that can trigger, especially older generations, but also our generation, that, let's say Saimir did it in his building, why should I not do it in my own? I think it's also about that. It's about understanding the dynamics of the community, but I think there's, in a sense, too many funds to apply for. Also, that is a bit confusing. And also, that is a process to give assistance to many generations or many inhabitants on how to navigate on that. So it's a very complex also issue. But yeah, a successful story would work.
I just would add, so I'm completely with you that this is a paramount issue. But I mean, I don't know whether it's fair to ask us. I mean, we are the panelists from the activism. So, because I'm very much convinced that this task should be carried out by really then local people. You were saying, I mean, they have really been into the bureaucratic scene, in order to explain this. What I know, for instance, the colleagues from the GIZ, they are very much as well into that issue with all the problems. So they are working in tandems with as well colleagues from the local municipalities, then in order to bring in European experiences and even then from other transformation processes. And I know, for instance, in Vilnius, in Lithuania, that they have established specific offices to explain the people. So this is, I mean, nothing. We are not talking about 5 years to explain the people. This will take decades. But this is.
I would also maybe add something from the Polish context, because in this case, I think if it comes to the thermal insulation and the modernization of the buildings itself, we were quite fast and successful with it, but this was mostly because of the economic interest, I guess. and the availability of the grants and co-finance mechanism by the cities or state or European funds. And this is not an issue. I mean, this was, I guess, never a part of the activist programs in Poland because it happened anyway. I would say that this caused this what we seen yesterday also Pastelosa. So the problem of the aesthetics, and this is maybe also the question to the KEK initiatives, how these educational projects change it, if people started also taking care not only about their economic interests but something more about cultural, architectural values. And also I think like one of the biggest achievements of Polish urban movements and activists would be the implementation of the participatory budgets as a law in Poland. So this is required by the law that the municipality has to have the share of the budget that it's made for the inhabitants to create projects, to vote for them, and then to implement. And this happened also because of the activist movement, and it happened on the beginning as a pilot project, but that required the legal changes. So this is also something that we had to make our authorities to do, not ask politely. So yeah.
Comment on that, but maybe after the with the participatory budget, maybe I comment on that. I think it really goes back to what you said. As a person who actually put on a project this year and won the public vote, and my project will be developed further, I really feel like this is the case where the municipality took over the project, and I'm not very optimistic about what is going to happen with it. It is supposed to be like a transformation of a former parking into a park. But the idea behind it was that we just wanted to kind of have the permission to occupy the space, to kind of turn it into like a sort of a garden. And it might be the case that it's just going to be like benches from a catalog and some sort of like a typical plants that are going to be put there because of the very strict procedures that must go through the whole system. And I'm not really blaming the municipality, I'm more like blaming the model that we cannot just get the money and, for example, do gardening ourselves because it has to go through the public tender and etc. So this is more like a case that where you don't necessarily need the municipal involvement. And in terms of like arranging of public spaces and activating some open spaces, this is something that it feels like easier to do with activists, and they just need to be supported. But I'm also thinking about next steps. Like for me, it is too little to have a community garden. I would like to have take over also housing resources and sort of like create a more open economy. So I'm not sure if I'm exactly, my experiences are probably a bit different from the other presentations today.
Can I add just shortly? So what I show today comes after 15 years of experience of doing placemaking, where we get a lot of likes and a lot of failures. So this time with the PhD, I tried a different approach. So saying not organizing the commons, but try to identify what are the mechanisms that are there and produce the commons and support that mechanism. And in this case was local narratives, a sort of tolerance of ambiguity of using the public space, so not really regulated, and bring the, let's say, the real narratives of the people in the mainstream discourse. And then people will organize themselves and ask for a proper garden and stuff like that. So I was kind of making a step back from interventionist to a more facilitator, or trying to organize the the narrative, not the space.
First of all, I thank you very much. I really like this session with all these inspiring concepts. And my impression is, although every case is kind of individual, there seems to be some kind of standard toolkit possible, collecting milestones for establishing civil engagements, for incubating, establishing and developing civil engagements that have the potential to become a good or even a best practice milestones. Would you basically agree on that? And if so, would you be willing to be part of a kind of committee in the ETOM-NEB-Lab to collect such kind of guidelines, which can be divided to special cases like post-Soviet, non-post-Soviet, individually owned, officially owned, listed, not listed, whatever. But my impression is there is some kind of standard toolkit which can apply in different situations.
Yeah.
You can start.
I'm the topic of my PhD, for example, I chose specifically because it is a model, and any conference I go, I first have to spend like 15 minutes explaining how the housing cooperative model works in Poland and specifically in Warsaw because of the land issues, land ownership issues that exist there, and why is it so that the situation is like it is. So I specifically chosen kind of my topics because they're, in my opinion, not even country-specific, but really city-specific issues. And I think there is some value in that. And I would say we're trying to figure out, for example, like a legislative model that doesn't exist in other places. And we see also like a value in having something like custom design. In a way, these are the resources we can kind of have. So I would say that in our case, I wouldn't say it's like something that we would share. And yesterday we were talking that, of course, like Western examples are very interesting, and we can look at cooperatives in Zurich, but at the end of the day, if we want to implement them, then we have to have a completely different strategy. And we really have to work with very local actors in our local ways. So I would say that doesn't apply to at least what we're trying to achieve in the association.
I completely agree. So I would say it depends on the height where you fly. So I mean, on the very like top, well, there is like this toolkit or something which is like very general and which could be applied not even like to modernist housing, but to every like neighborhood. So, but then the other the next step, and then where I would say it got rather challenging. Yeah, then it's very much located on the political context. I mean, how the city or how the municipality in general behaves, about the legal restrictions we have. We said, well, what you all said, I'm gonna not repeat that. But this is, I would say, the question coming then up, if I understood you right. Okay, we write down a how-to. So I think this is then rather difficult.
I would say yes and yes in your two questions, but I think that's not. I think it's political, but it comes from a social understanding and social will also to do things. I mean, politics are not done in the parliament. Politics are done also here. We're talking about politics of space, of common space. So I think the examples are necessary in any case, and then you need to. You need to put your hands in the mud and make it clay and make a pottery. It's not so easy. But yes, for both.
maybe the question's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Last comment and then the question.
I just wanted to say that I agree with everything that has been said before me, but it's really important that whatever you are doing, whether you are developing a toolkit or we have developed this kind of toolkits. We have leaflets, we have publications, but yes, they are very general. But what is emphasized in them is that you really have to rely on the local context. You really have to rely on the local needs, the local stakeholders, because without that, it is not possible to achieve anything. Yeah.
So the question.
Yeah. First, let me make a remark because I'm responsible for urban development of one city district of Prague. I'm already 10 years vice mayor for urban development of the area, and at the same time I'm teaching at the university. And the start of my political career was really activist. Yeah. So I think it's a question of scale, because it's very different if you are introducing the idea of having a pedestrian bridge via having some small boat and going there and back over the river with the people and trying to support the interest of the pedestrian bridge, and finally, when the interest is up enough to achieve the construction of the bridge. Yeah. So it's always about the question of scale, of complexity of the processes, of the power you actually have or you don't have. Yeah. So I would say that I don't think. I don't know if you agree, but this is my experience. Yeah. So the initiation. I don't think that the city, like top down, should do all the smallest things in the neighborhood. It's not it. Yeah. And about this participatory budget, it's really hard. So therefore, we are not doing it, except we are doing it for schools. Because in schools, the amount of money is enough to really do interesting projects. Yeah. On the other hand, you can have a small-scale grants, where you are just giving money, and you let the NGOs, you let the groups of activists or the people living in the area to do it themselves. This is very important to not to organize all the activities. Yeah. So I don't think that municipality is the one who should organize everything. Yeah. So it's very important. The scale is very important, and the cooperation is very important. So those two.
Yeah, I would say. We have a question. Okay, then.
It's nearly the same question, but as a question, what are the limits of this scale, of these activities? And additional, what are the building structures that co-work with this approach? I could imagine if you have a neighborhood with small buildings, you could you know each other, and you can do in this way. But if you have large scale buildings, maybe this approach is more difficult to follow. What do you think?
I don't know whether I got the question correct, and the buildings were in Georgia. They were like 11 stories high.
Yeah,
so
that's what I mean. Yeah, if you have a big scale buildings, I imagine it's more difficult to get the people together. And if you have small scale buildings, it's more easier. So, what are the limits for this activity, in your opinion? And what are the limits of this guerrilla tactic? In practice?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question about what you how I would say, how is formed a neighborhood? Yeah, so where people know each other. I think it's difficult really to say a number. Yeah, but if you go to the neighborhood, then you feel well, or you know there are people like gathering around. There is kind of a community. Yeah, and of course, yeah. For instance, we did a survey there in Tbilisi in several buildings whether they would like to remove the cars or not. So, yeah, and we were really trying to get everyone involved. And of course, it's then in terms of like activities, it has the limits that you can't. And this was, I think, that what you were saying, this is not substituting official planning. Yeah, it gets incentives. Yeah, and this is as well depending on the neighborhood, because sometimes you get like with a special event, you get the people engaged, even with a big number, and in other neighborhoods not so. I think there is really not really a specific or a rule which fits always to give now, but this is what you are saying. This is coming from another point, and like your neighbor said, this is another scale. Yeah? So always a neighborhood scale, and then it's difficult really to precisely say what is the size of the neighborhood.
Yeah, also I think it really comes to the scale of the project, of the space, because like you also need some critical mass to start the process, because if the project is too big for the community, too small, it will also not be successful, because there is too little people that can engage, but also in terms of housing estates, like some people move in, some people move out. So also to sustain these projects for longer term, we need to have some critical mass of the people that can be somehow engaged on the longer term than like 1 year project, and then one person will move out and then the whole thing collapses because there is not enough people to work on it. So
may I only add one thing about regarding the scale? I would say it's very important that the municipality allows what's not forbidden in a small scale, because nowadays in Bratislava we have perfect mayor who was an activist, and he understands this. But before, small interventions were removed because it was not allowed. There was no permission by the municipality. And if it's not forbidden of course, in a scale that is like normal, then just let the people be active.
I guess we had the questions there. Yeah. The first was there, and then Hubert. Then I think I have the last one, or you have. So we need to finish soon. So
yes, yeah, okay. I'll
short questions only.
I'll keep it short. Yeah, I'm a little bit hidden down here. I got a question coming back to a sentence by Samir Christo, because you said a sense of ownership is important but hard to organize. And I would be interested, why is it important, and what are your steps to organize this sort of ownership? Is it important for self-empowerment of the people who live in these settlements? Is it important for better contacts within the neighborhood? And what are your demands? And this goes to the whole round, as you're all organized in institutions or academia. What are your demands to the public, to the owners, and as well to research, science, and academia itself? So the question is, you said that the ownership is important. So how to organize it?
I think it's impossible to organize. Maybe I said something different in terms of the word organizer, but I think to empower the sense of ownership, to acknowledge it, for at least in Albania is fundamental. I think in general there is a sense that you are responsible only for what is inside your apartment, not your exterior walls, not your stair that you share with your neighbors, and so on and so forth. So that is something very important, and if we can extend even to public space and to the commons, even more, right? So I think it's impossible because it's important because, you know, we were a state that in 1950s all private property was taken from the private, so it was state-owned. If you were living in your private house, you had 20 families living in the same two-floor house with you. So one room for 5 or 6 people. I'm not exaggerating at all. And then you found a moment that what was yours at some point was taken by someone else in the 90s, or someone built something on top of it illegally, and then the state legalized that property to someone else rather than you, and they send you in another area to take some other property for compensation. And on top of that, also public property was taken. You saw the example of the river, and you can see thousands of other examples. So if we don't show that commons is a notion that exists, it's not something that is controlled by an iron hand and he says we do propaganda here and that's it, then there is no society. It's an individualistic way of living inside 4 walls, and that's it. So I think all these initiatives we are discussing, I think, are an added value on, you know, not disrupting this political rhetoric of I do this and you do exactly what I say, but the idea that we can do better. You know, there is always more. Or I came with 5 things in my mind yesterday, but I will leave tomorrow with 520, you know, from all of you. Because you triggered my mind also to think of different ways to do different challenges, different problems. Also similar, eh?
Hubert?
So I have the question which follows follows Ruta question.
You are the last question.
Yes, so follows Ruta question and your answer, because it was for me a bit shocking that you say how to encourage people to apply, because in Poland we say if they give you have to take, and I have also written the article for Polish issue on Poland for Czech Era magazine, which I have entitled, which my title was changed because it was too vulgar. I entitled European Found Suckers, because Poland was the only case when, in one perspective, one country used 100% available funds, and it was Poland 2007-2013. And it is so that municipality or people look for what you can get funds, and then you do. So thermomodernization took place. Also, when government gave funds for photovoltaic, the plan for 2030 was reached in 2022, and then is problem that system is not able to take it. And I have the question to people from our country: is it only in Poland such a way, or are there some countries similar that when there is money that people do because there is a money and encourage, or it is more like Lithuania that is problem to encourage people to apply for money?
Please, quick questions.
Short answers only.
Yeah, short.
Yes, I can comment about Estonian experience. As I said, every house is separate flat owner association, or we call it korteriühistu, KÜ. I am the board member of such KÜ. The difficult part is to came to this one decision with inhabitants of what we will renovate, the roof, the parking lot, or what else. After it's made, this decision is made, everything is easy because application for funding is very easy, and you can consult a lot about the application. So in Estonia it's very easy to take it. And municipality also do educational days for korteriühistu board members. Yes?
Well, in Romania, to apply to European funds and get them makes you a good mayor, so good gospodar. So they apply like crazy, and that goes hand in hand with the civilization discourse and this kind of self-shame, westernization, all these kind of things are linked together. So it's a sort of political program that's shared by all parties from left to right, and it works very well. It's very hard to tell to a mayor that not to do anything, because then he's quite powerless in his image.
But I was asking more on the level of inhabitants. If there is money, does it encourage them that we have to take because we can have it?
They are quite. There was a program, for example, in Drumutabere that the city hall wants to support these practices, and people were very wary take money from the city hall because you never know what comes after. They have these memories from the 70s and 80s and 90s, so they are quite careful. And I want to end something about ownership. Maybe it was the previous question. So maybe sometimes it's a trap to look to ownership from only from a legal point of view. So we find a paradox. All our practices were rather individual gardens, individual garages. Garages are even private spaces. But however, there are so many that they form communities of practitioners. So people recognize each other. So you're also doing garaging, I'm also doing gardening. So we are together in this as a way of life. So they form a collective, but without sharing collectively the space, but through individual practices. It's actually like a block of flats put into horizontal. Each one in their own small parcel, but divided, by connected by social infrastructure, by gifts economy, by solidarity economy. So all these kind of things are really valuable, and they are there, and there is a form of ownership. It's not from a legal point of view.
Unfortunately, we have to close this session, this moment, and just to come to some conclusion or some lessons learned, how what could it be from this session?
Yeah, I made a list of 6 things, and the last thing would be maybe the question: what is missing? I will read them and then write. It will be faster than me reading and writing the same time, or you can note it. Yes, or maybe this will be the fastest thing. Welcome our assistant. And so the first thing would be either ownership, but also sometimes it's not ownership, but feeling of responsibility for the place or feeling of belonging to the space. It doesn't need to be connected with the property rights to the place. So ownership or responsibility or belonging. Then the second thing would be the mediator, either internal or external, or some kind of structured interface between different actors, especially like these inhabitants and then the official bodies. Then the trust between actors is essential for any actions to be successful. Then I can't read. I mean the constant in terms of what you said about the participatory budget is the constant control, evaluation, evolution of mechanisms that are already implemented, because as in Tirana, as in Poland, the situation changes so fast that the once implemented mechanisms are not valid for like more than 5 years. So evolution and evaluation. Then shared experience or success stories, but with the acknowledging the local context and the differences in this very fragmented part of the world. So shared experiences. It will be the fastest thing to note. And then the scaling the projects according to the needs or targets or the capabilities of the local society. And then what would be missing? I don't know. Money, data, special data access. I know that after the talk with the Baza in Bucharest, that the access to data was like limited so much that some actions were impossible, or I don't know, the form of the legislation. 1 word or 2 maximum from each of you. Like, what would you add to it?
Resources.
New narratives.
That's all? The list is full? We are this successful. Okay. Robert has a word to add. Or you want us to leave the room?
I would... I'm so sorry. I would like to add something, because I always have with this participation, also from own experience, I think there's some dilemmata or a paradoxon. And one I think I would name is that whenever something is started by bottom up, by someone really investing hard blood in that, or how you call it, and then whenever it comes, and whenever this is successful, and whenever it's like recognized by the officials, and even if it's not just like taken from them for kind of propaganda or whatever, there comes the point when then there will be invested money. And actually that's the point everybody is happy. But then, because there is like, with money, it's always like because of the structure, of the legal structures, and also because of competition and transparency and so on, then there is involved a tender process. And then this very often includes the activists, because then they have to compete with everyone else who can like take part in that competition. And so that's actually like I think it's a structural fault. How is it possible to involve the activists from the very first situation when it comes to this point of investment? And I figure that out in very many projects. When I look at them, I look at who started it in the first place and who in the end then could carry it out, who in the end then built it, who in the end then was running the thing when it was finally established, and so on. Of course, it's good, like in your case, you started like the Slovak Design Center and you still work there. Or you can work there. Still, yeah, this is another story. This is another story, yeah. But very often it's like the ones who started it are not the ones who like, pick up the fruits in the end. So this is like, I think it's a structural problem, and it's too less paid attention.
I would also like to maybe add something that.
It's probably that's why no one knows, because
the process of like institutionalization that is sometimes a threat. But in my opinion, also like the commercialization of space that happens within this process of like, okay, so someone occupies a space and then the municipality gets interested and then they invest in it and then they commercialize it. But what was maybe interesting for me from the Romanian example is that the economic activity does not mean commercialization, and then this public spaces versus the commons. So we started talking about the commons because there's so much more freedom in this word that for me it's also interesting to allow this freedom of uses, also economic uses, as long as they're not leading to this commercialization.
So I got your point, which is leading to a huge debate, because I mean it's leading to the question of if we improve wherever, like a neighborhood, or like we have all these pioneer like initiatives, and then they get like fancy and their gentrification, etc. But I think the projects that were presented today, I mean, they have at least as goal that it empowers and strengthens the neighborhood itself, because this would be a prerequisite that they would be successful, that it's not taken over for like another like even commercial like purpose, but that the people would drive itself. And of course this is challenging.
I would just say we need another tender. We need other tender processes so that it's legitimate, that people who actually started it, so when it's activist driven, also have a kind of out of competition run or whatever. I mean, of course, it has to be based on a legal and transparent way. Do not exclude them, bracket them off from then these processes when they then finally acknowledged and start. And another thing, if I may, because I'm just like, I'm messing up the time now.
15 seconds.
But I didn't want to interrupt because it was. And the other thing is, I think it's I would call it the representation dilemma, because when you have this kind of, you have these activists, you know, and people who are activists are like naturally, sometimes not, but mostly they're loud, they engage, they raise their voice. But is it always transparent? Whom are they representing?
Of course not. So that's why I guess the initiatives like Barbara's were the external body, which is the expert, is crucial.
Yeah,
also.
that can be of course something to get this exterior view to really. To have an objective view on it.
Yeah, that's why we have the neutral mediator there.
But it's true that I was working on a very long participatory project of urban regeneration in Cologne, actually. And there was one woman, she was representing a tango school, and at the end it was like everyone had this tango school as the main focus point in their urban planning projects. So it is true that sometimes some voices are louder than others, although we're kind of facing that we're having an association that we want to work for sort of our profit, but also the profit of social economy. And we have this difficult position that we argue that we want to start a tenant housing cooperative that we will profit from. And I also somehow feel it is legitimate that we are working for our profit, but which will also kind of expand and make the whole society profit from our initiative. And it's a very difficult balance. And then it's difficult to get the trust, because you are working for yourself. You want to improve the general system and general space, but this conflict of interest is difficult sometimes.
And there would be two others, but I won't stress. I save it for the last. I save it for the last panel, for the final panel. But it goes in that direction. Yeah. So thank you so much. I wanted to add that.
Yeah, I think
I'm thinking of a buzzword which describes it.
Yes,
during
and I think it's nice to add also that I think that the modernist housing estates give us a lot of because of their shape and way of design, they give us a lot of freedom in doing such a projects, which are not always possible. And this particular space is kind of an experimental ground for all of them. We also need to remember and to work with our egos, like most of you as are architects or involved in architecture or urban planning, that these processes are not about changing the shape or physical space only or even mostly. It's more about the social change. That's why I think it should be first we should involve the mediators and experts on the processes, and then work on the shape and projects. And with activists, the visual part is easy to communicate. That's why they catchy and they sometimes successful, and sometimes the result is not, because maybe the focus is too much into the transformation and not the process. And yes, and should we? Do you want to add something, or should we invite to participate in the lunch break?
I think lunch break.
Lunch break.